So we'll start the enumeration pen testing steps by first finding the network range of the company or the target. And we'll do that with things like a whois lookup, so I can see what ranges they've been assigned on the public side. This is typically where we find the most important servers because it's usually the face of the company. And usually that face is providing a service where people are logging in or getting information about the company. After I have that range, I'm going to then need to break out my calculator so I can calculate the subnet mask, which can help me narrow down my ping sweeps. I don't want to ping an entire class A range, right? Or class B range. This would also help me with port scanning. After we've calculated the subnet mask, the next step is then to actually try to discover the hosts that are publicly available from, again, the outside. Now, we can use programs like Nmap, as well as possibly other programs, but they might be a little bit more detectable. Like Angry IP Scanner is extremely easy to detect. But with Nmap, I could go through and say, just scan the IP addresses, but well, do one every minute, so it's not seen as a ping sweep. After we've discovered the hosts, guess what? We're going after the ports, right? We need to be able to see which ports are open, which ones are closed, as well as which ports are only allowing certain traffic through. This gives us a better layout of the security policy on those devices. Again, one of the more popular tools that we'd use here would be Nmap. So after we've done our port scan, we got a couple other enumeration techniques that we can utilize to give us a better picture. One of those would be doing a NetBIOS enumeration. When we perform a NetBIOS enumeration, we use it to identify network devices and to get a list of computers that may be on the domain. We might also be able to see a list of shares, in some cases even passwords. Now, some of the more famous tools that we can use for NetBIOS enumeration would include things like Hyena, WinFingerprint, and SuperScan. I think we showed you SuperScan in the reconnaissance course. It's personally one of my favorites. After we do NetBIOS enumeration, again, not necessarily every device is going to respond to these different types of enumeration, but we're trying to build out our map here, right? So another type of enumeration we can do to kind of fill in the blanks would be an SNMP enumeration. Now, SNMP is a protocol that we use to actually manage our network devices. And again, when we talked in the reconnaissance course, we talked about how if SNMP is set up incorrectly, we can actually have those devices identify themselves to us, giving us information like user accounts, firmware that may be installed on the device, as well as its uptime and IP addresses that it's aware of. Now, one of the more popular tools that we use for SNMP enumeration would include SolarWinds SNMP enumeration that's included in their engineer's toolset, as well as Oputil's network monitoring toolset. Now, obviously, SNMP won't necessarily work on every device. And I don't want the icons here or the images here to mislead you, because SNMP isn't always used just on network devices like routers and switches. We can install SNMP on servers to manage those boxes as well, or to be notified when there's something going on. But if we still haven't drawn out our map completely of all of our devices, we may want to try doing LDAP enumeration. You guys remember LDAP?
Yeah, Dale, isn't that part of Active Directory?
Yeah, in Microsoft's world, it is part of Active Directory, but there are other products out there that support this LDAP environment. And LDAP is basically a database where we store user information like their first name, their last name, personal information, time and dates that they're able to log in, where they're able to log in from, what departments they work in. And there's a plethora of information. Oh, pause. See, I got my word in. You didn't think I was going to do it. Okay, some of you may be tired of that word, so let me use a different one. There's a superfluity of information that's stored. In fact, LDAP enumeration is kind of the mother lode, because we can do other things based off the information we discover here, including social engineering attacks. Now, the tools that we would use here would include things like LDAP Administrator by Softier, or LDAP Miner and Lumina. In fact, there's a overabundance there's another replacement word for you, of utilities out there that can achieve this step. After we've done our LDAP enumeration, another technique that we can use is something referred to as NTP enumeration. NTP, anybody remember this one? Yeah, remember NTP is the clock or the time synchronization protocol. And unfortunately, that protocol sometimes allow you to query those servers that are acting as the time synchronization for more information, such as a list of peers, or I could do a show peers, or I could pull some stats of how often people are checking in. In fact, there's a nifty little program out there called NTP Fingerprint Utility, which allows you to identify the operating system that the NTP server is running on. Well, if we haven't filled out the rest of our map, the next thing we would want to try to test for is SMTP enumeration. Now, SMTP you should be very familiar with because we utilize it almost every day. It's the protocol we use for emailing. So yeah, I can use a nifty little Perl script that's called SMTP enum, as well as several switches with Nmap to expose legitimate email addresses, which obviously could be login names. And we don't want to leave out Metasploit. It's actually got some really cool features in it that can help me to enumerate users' emails out of the SMTP protocol. And remember, if you're not familiar with some of these techniques and the tools that I just mentioned, you're going to want to go back and take a look at our course. In this particular case, it would be on reconnaissance. After you've then tested for SMTP enumeration, you'd want to go after the actual mother load besides LDAP enumeration, and that is, DNS, which is our domain naming services. This is a service that just keeps track of names to IPs. And so if I'm able to somehow go out and synchronize or download a list of IP addresses that are associated to computer names, do you think I have a Batman problem yet? I can very quickly fill out a complete list of your network infrastructure, including machines that may no longer be in play. And you may be thinking, why would that be advantageous to me, Dale? Well, because that gives me an IP address that I can use and a computer name that I can use and make myself look legit on your environment. Now, there are several tools out there, again, that we can use for DNS enumeration, including BileSuite, Nmap, and TXDNS. And of course, we can't forget the good old NSLOOKUP command, right? So now we've got a ton of information that we've gathered. So yeah, you got it. We're going to update our documentation. In fact, this documentation is going to be refreshed at almost every step along the way. And we're going to use this documentation as we build it up so that we can analyze the results and suggest some countermeasures to the client to make their security better. And that's really the goal here, is to make sure that we protect the customer and make sure our white hats stay white.